Facciamo un bel applauso e accogliamo sul palco Didier Paradisi.
Hello, everyone. It's amazing to come in this event and see that many like-minded people. And I'm Didier Paradisi, and the CEO and co-founder of Synergy4S. For this special occasion, I actually chose a topic that I really have at heart, and a topic that is highly contemporary right now. And it's blockchain. Is it actually a key to foster sustainability? So first, to begin thinking about that, I'll leave you a quote from George Bernard Shaw, and he says that imagination is the beginning of creation. You imagine what you desire, you will what you imagine, and then at last, you create what you will. So to begin imagining now, we first need to set a starting point. So let's look at the current situation and the technologies we use right now to make goods, energy, and products are actually unsustainable. And that's leading to massive consequences in terms of environmental, social, and economical issues. We see developing countries that are being left out. We move entire production processes overseas, and we leave our waste there, polluting the air, the ground, and the sea. And this increased pollution is actually what's causing massively damages in natural ecosystem. We're seeing biodiversity loss, we see species that are getting extinct, and we also see ecosystem that will change forever. In the world, we're also witnessing an increase of natural disasters right now, and we see the death tolls of the people that also increase. We are already affecting food production, and we see food scarcity spreading all over the globe. Global poverty is increasing as well, and we see massive inequalities at all levels of society. Gender inequalities are increasing. Health services are often available for the higher people and not for the poorest. And we also see education services which are getting more and more elitary. So what's the root cause? The root cause of that issue is that we live in a world where the economic system is what determines the rules of our society. And those flawed rules and this flawed system is actually what's creating a massive unsustainable production and consumption. We also see a lot of technology lock-ins because we invest for technologies for decades and they become obsolete before we reach a return on investment. So now we're seeing new financial solutions that are facilitated by new technologies such as blockchain, for instance. And we see interest from governments and policymakers, and some of them really embrace this movement, but on the other hand, some of them see it as a threat. And people are acknowledging those issues right now, and they're starting to lose confidence in the system. And when people start to lose confidence, what happens is that we have instability. And instability creates opportunity. And we do need a change. We need a sustainable system. We need a sustainable system because sustainability is actually a key if we want the people and the planet to thrive years to come. But that's definitely not an easy task. And I will set you just a scenario right now to begin imagining, because after all, if you're here, you're very curious creators, thinkers, or believers. So just for 1 second, imagine a clean world with no social disparities, where all the essential needs and services are owned by no one, but they are available for everyone for free. And some of you might think it's impossible, some of you might think we will need centuries to get there. And some of you might have some ideas of those solutions. But I studied it and I can tell you that it is actually possible, and there are communities of more than 1,000 people that are actually actively working towards those possibilities. But to understand how can we make such a change, we do need also to understand that beliefs in humanity change over time. We now believe in the economic system as we know it, but one day that could change for everyone. We saw that in the past, for instance, in religions. We used to believe in the god of thunder because we couldn't explain why thunders used to strike on earth. But now we have different problems, hence we have different gods. And we saw that in politics pretty much every single day. We have politicians that jump from right to left and left to right. And we also see it in blockchain. We see that when we were in a bull market, everyone is in love with blockchain. But then when there's a bear market, people start to lose confidence and they're like, maybe I don't believe in it. And now, I mean, we saw it also in the economic system. First, we used to barter a good for a good. Then we started using gold. We started to use precious metals. Then we used paper notes, which virtually have no value. Then we use credit cards, even less value. And now we're being challenged with a technology which is even more abstract, and that's blockchain. And innovations will definitely take over one day the current system. But we need to make sure, and how can we make sure that those innovations do not create another float system? So here, what we're doing right now is actually that we're adding patches to a canvas that one day will get too old and will just rip itself apart. And as a great thinker said, Buckminster Fuller, and he worked all his life on complex systems, he said that you never change things by fighting the existing reality. Instead, to change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. So I studied how to build this new model, a model that actually supports the people, the planet, and it follows the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. And those 17 goals you see here are actually a blueprint for peace and prosperity for the people and the planet now and into the future. If we want to think about how we create and how we change completely a new system, we need a radical approach. And where do we see systems that go outside the economic narrative? We see them in nature, because nature features plenty of systems with no money, no ownership, no identity as we know it. And it's actually by taking those principles that we can create an almost nature-like ecosystem that defies economy as we know it. I'll give you a few examples of the systems I looked at. And one of them, for instance, is the energy system. We have the sun shining from the sun every single day. We have energy coming on Earth. And that fuels photosynthetic organisms which grow and become food for other organisms. And this abundance of energy coming from the sun creates this cycle and allows us to have all the different food sources available for everyone. Another connected system here is the oxygen system. And we see no one has to care about how to buy it or how to get oxygen. It's available for everyone for free. And trees that no one owns produce this oxygen in abundance. And this abundance of trees and tree species is actually what provides an incredible stability to the system. We also see in smaller scale systems, for instance in red harvesting ant colonies, we have the ability with those ants to switch their role based upon the need of the colony. So if there's a predator, some of them can change their role and become soldiers. If there's an increased need for food, some of them will change their role and they will go forage. And if they need to expand their colony, they can do midden work by switching their role again. And this abundance of ant units is actually what provides security within the colony itself. So at all the natural systems that I looked at, I came up with a few main principles that are essential if we need to create such a system. First, we need to achieve commonization. We need everything available and owned by no one, so we don't create competition. We need abundance, so everyone can take their own share of the resources. And we need resilience, as resilience is the capacity of an ecosystem to actually undergo stresses, reorganizing itself and keeping the same function. And of course, as the system is digital and is man-made, and we live in a society with rules and not an utopian one, we must think as well about data security and cybersecurity. So by taking those principles, I realized a framework, and it's that round one you see there. I don't know why the writings came out wrong. But it consists in 5 interconnected layers, and you can imagine it as a pie. And those layers go from the outside to the core. And there is subsystem which can be added to the system, making this pie stronger and stronger. And the more subsystems we add, the more resilient the system becomes. So I will give you an example. Let's go at the core, where we have the service layer. And the service layer represents the rules, the objectives, the roles, and the actors of such system. And to summarize, again, we need to provide essential needs for everyone. At least the essential needs. We can also add other needs, definitely. We need a system that's commonized, so no one owns it, so we do not create competition. We need a distributed structure, and that would allow for a high resilience within the system. We need to make sure that we follow sustainable practices to produce the goods and the services we all need, and of course we need security. And with those rules, we come up with a set of actors and roles. And the beauty here is that we only have 3 actors and 3 roles. We don't need the third party that validates everything that happens in between. Consumers can be people, companies, or buildings. AI DAOs are autonomous organizations that are run by AI and are decentralized. And those autonomous organizations follow pre-programmed rules. And these are called smart contracts. We all know them. And basically, those ones will provide and will always go towards helping the system. And then we have the creators and the rule makers. And that's a very important role because those are the ones that will provide research and development for increasing those subsystems. Those are the ones that will release more subsystems within the system. And they will provide also support for legislations and to increase awareness. And every of those roles can actually, every of those actors can actually undertake any role. They can be users, producers, or backup. I'll give you a quick example. Think about autonomous cars that are owned by no one and are available for everyone around the city, and they have solar panels on the roof. So if someone needs to get from A to B, the car becomes a user. If then the sun is shining and no one's using the car, but it's producing electricity, it becomes a producer. And when at night a house needs energy because there's a rise in the spike of the need of energy, and the car is not being used and has energy in its belly, in its battery, it can just drive itself, plug to the grid or plug to a house, and give its energy away. So then it becomes a backup. So that's the roles and the actors. But if we go, on the other hand, on the outermost layer, we have the component layer. That's the easiest one, and it represents simply the physical components of the system. So we have smart meters, servers, computers, cars, energy-generating technologies, and storages. And it's the layers in between which are very important. And it's the communication layer representing the communication protocols to use for having a connectivity between all devices and sensors. We need an information layer that provides for all the information guidelines to follow, and also a function layer to give all the functional and IT architectures that we need to manage the flows of everything within the system. And here is where blockchain comes into track. We can track, manage, and move around within the flows all the prime materials, the data and information that happens within the system with this technology. But we cannot only do that. I'll give you a few more examples. For instance, it's very difficult in the world right now to track a product from the start to the end of its life cycle. So we don't really know their environmental impact. But with a blockchain system used in the supply chain, we could actually make sure that we prevent waste inefficiency, we prevent fraud and unethical practices, because everything is there available publicly. This increased transparency and tracking of those flows can actually allow us to help and to make better informed choices for the consumers. We see a lot of recycling programs right now happening all over the world, but there is often little to no incentive for people to actually participate. But again, a blockchain system could actually help us to provide a reward, a financial reward, in terms of tokens, for instance. And that would encourage people to actively participate. And with this system, again, we can also easily track everything that happens within, so materials, costs, and actually the profits that those programs make. And that would also allow us, for every one of us, to know their exact participation and their exact impact, because it's always something we want to know. We want to evaluate ourselves all the time. And in the energy sector, we also have a massive problem. We make centralized grids all the time that we have to move energy and travel energy from long and long distances. And often we lose these energies along the way, and we also have a lot of surplus that we waste because we do not have a lot of storages right now. And with such a system, with a peer-to-peer blockchain system for energy, we could reduce the need to transport this energy over long distances. We could make sure that we save energy actually by taking it locally where it's produced and moving it directly where it's needed. That would also reduce the need for storage of energy, hence reducing the cost of energy itself. We're now seeing governments and politicians and corporations that are actually signing a lot of environmental treaties, but we see also a lot of misreporting of data and promises that are not met. But if we track this data transparently on an immutable blockchain, we could make sure that those governments keep their promises, because we all see what they wrote, what they said, and we will see exactly the data and the numbers of those environmental treaties. And if we track everything also that happens within this system, so the carbon credits they use, the legal documents and administrative documents as well. We could drastically reduce costs for that, and we could use this money for other projects, for always projects for the good of the people or the planet. And we could also make sure that we discourage them, because as we all see everything, they cannot go back from their promises, but they have to keep them because everyone is available there and is looking at them. In the non-profit sector as well, if you want to donate, for instance, to an environmental cause, we see a lot of corruption, a lot of bureaucracy and inefficiencies within the system, and we never know where the money goes. We cannot see exactly where the money starts and when the money ends. But if we track it through the blockchain, we could ensure that this money does not disappear and reach their target. And we could make sure also, for instance, creating a system where money gets automatically released only when they meet specific targets. And that's a blockchain system also for developing countries, for instance, in terms of those non-profits. We could make sure that we can send money also in places where they have no good banking infrastructure. Finally, we have the carbon tax, and carbon tax is essential for the future. We need to start paying for the carbon footprint. And tracking carbon with such a system could actually allow us and protect from data tampering and exactly know those impacts. And we can use this data to actually have the carbon tax paid at the moment where the product is sold. So we would encourage people to actually go and buy better products with less carbon footprint. And we could also, at this point, encourage companies to reshape the whole supply chains because they need to meet this demand. And of course, we could also create some other little projects with sustainability scores so everyone would see the score of every single product, and definitely that would help, again, in making better choices. But unfortunately, to make such a system, we have some barriers that actually need to be overcome. And I give you here just a few, and I left one out, which is actually the most essential one, and it's time. We need time. We need to wait. We need to work and wait. But at the same time, what we do is that we build closed system, and those creates barrier because they create a high environment that is full of competition. And this competition blocks from those new innovation popping up. We see the technologies that we need that are not ready yet. I saw the first commonized pilots that are being deployed, commonized pilots for the good of the people and the planet. But those commonized pilots stay pilots for many, many years, and they often do not become reality, a real idea. We see 5G technologies that are popping up, and they're amazing for the communication between the sensors and devices of the system. But unfortunately, we developed them mainly at the mobile level because it's where the money goes. Mobile phones, everyone has them, so we invest in 5G for mobile phones. But to actually communicate within this system in real time and very fastly, 5G could be a great solution, but we still need to develop it. We also see legislations that begin to change, but again, they mainly focus for legal tax purposes mainly. So again, it's all around the money. And we miss a global consensus, and global consensus is essential. It's essential because in a system where everything is shared and flows around and communicates with each other, we need agreements. Because without agreements, we cannot reach security. So we can overcome those barriers, but we must need to put efforts and research and development in those novel clean technologies to actually achieve an abundance of possibilities to add within the system. We need to make sure that we develop an artificial intelligence for the good of the people and the planet, and not an artificial intelligence that's developed only for military purposes or for the purpose of increasing sales, because that would increase acceptance from the people of such systems. We need to test those ownerless organizations everywhere. We need to test them in the middle of the people. They need to see how those companies governed by AI work, because again, acceptance is essential, and this would increase the belief from everyone in such a system. An important thing is that we need to develop policies and legislations, because there are, imagine how many legal and ethical issues there could be having an ownerless organization that is owned by just an artificial intelligence. But once we develop those, we can go forward. And we must design, of course, complete functional and IT architecture, because we need to manage the flows of everything that happens within the system. And we also need to develop standardized connectivity protocols to allow for people to actually build something if they have an idea, plug it into the system, and there's a new subsystem that's created. So we need to standardize everything and the communication between everything that happens in the system. So at Synergy4S, what we want to do is actually create an ecosystem that provides services to people, but at the same time, we release countless of sustainable development projects around the globe. So now I will show you a video, and some of you might already saw it, and it's a 2-minute video on how to start a movement. And I do really like it, so I decided to put it here. And actually, let's see. Can we play the video by any chance? No? Okay. Well, mainly the video, what it shows, I will say it with my voice, and it's this guy here that is dancing alone. He dances alone in a crowd without his shirt, and he's being ridiculized. But what he wants to do is a leader, and a leader needs to be easy to follow. And this guy is standing there, and he's dancing around the crowd all alone. People are looking at him, and they're laughing. And soon after, we see the first person who comes in and starts and join. And then now there are 2 people dancing all together. And this transformed this guy in a leader and not in a lone nut anymore. And that's a very important point, because in life, followers do not emulate leaders, but followers emulate other followers. So once this second guy comes in, we quickly see a third guy that joins, but now 3 becomes a crowd, and a crowd demands attention. And as soon as that starts, we have people running in, and they start dancing. I'm sorry that we can't see the video. But there's people coming in, they start dancing, and they create this movement. And then we turn the table completely, because the people that are sitting there will be the ones that are being ridiculized for not joining the movement. And we want to create this. We want to find those first followers. We want to become the pillar of this change towards a sustainable development. So I leave you one quote here, last quote, I promise. And it's from Walt Disney. It's someone who imagined a lot during his life. And he says that us, in society, we keep moving forward. We keep opening new doors and doing new things, because we're curious, and curiosity actually keeps us leading down new paths. And it's exactly those paths that we need to take if we want to get where we want to go, so towards sustainable development. And if we understand that those issues are real and that we need to be part of the movement, I'll leave you one last message from myself this time. And it's, let's get out there. Imagine. Be curious and build. Let's change the system together to make this world a better place. Thank you very much. I don't know if you have any questions, maybe? Yes. Yes, definitely. We are trying to create this ecosystem of crypto and NFT services, mainly using tangible uses of NFTs. So for certificates, possession certificates, for identities, but we also create a carbon credit ecosystem. We will create also an NFT marketplace for good, an academy, a learning academy, and everything we do will support the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. And we will give 85% of our revenue, and we will create sustainable development projects with this revenue. And the community will actually be the one voting those projects. And for the NFT marketplace for good, the artist will actually be the one that decides the project to make. And then we'll create the team, we'll bring it there, and we'll bring it forward. And we want to empower communities. We want to do everything that is needed for the good of the people and humanity. We accept every type of project that actually follows any or more of those 17 development goals. This mainly is the quick idea of what we do at Synergy4S. Yes, that's correct. We want to show people that we can create businesses that do generate revenue, but at the same time, they make good for everyone. So 85%, it's a lot, but that we don't care about that too much. But imagine if other companies would just give 5 or 10% of their revenue for actually the good of the people or the planet, how good the world will be. So yes, that's what we want to show. We want to try and start this movement and show to people that blockchain needs to go towards the sustainability direction, because if we start on the wrong foot, then we create the same problems that we have with the old system. And one day blockchain, at least I believe, and I guess we all believe, it will be very important for the next year to come, so it will be probably everywhere. Thank you. Yes, apologies. So we want FDAs. Yeah. So he said how to integrate this AI system within that. And what I explained you today is a view of the future. Is something that will happen in 20 years. We're starting this movement, but we need to have research, we need to have development. We will support all of that, and we will develop those AIs, we will test them, but not only us. There's companies doing this. There's thousands of people right now working towards this possibility. I worked with them a couple of years ago in the Netherlands, and there's the energy company, the grid company, which is the equivalent of Terna here in Italy, that hired me because what they want to do is kind of create an energy system where energy is free for everyone. They don't want anymore to have decentralized, and where energy is not paid. So we won't directly introduce AI. This is not focused mainly on synergy. This is focused on a view of the future. That's something I was just wanting to share with you. But we will start developing and helping those creators to actually go and also communicate with governments and try to form legislations. And we will try and be seen and see how to develop that all together. But we require a lot of time. That's the first barrier I saw, that it's very, very important, unfortunately, right now.
So you said the equivalent of Terna in the Netherlands want to build a grid or a decentralized energy generation system that gives electricity for free to customers or businesses. But how are they going to repay their investments in all this infrastructure if they sell it for free?
Yes, that's also a question I have a lot. And we see right now those people in these communities that are working in creating those projects that stay there and they generate their value themselves and they slowly and slowly expand. I'll give you an example. There's a machine that's now developed by the militaries, but is a simple machine that you put sand in this machine, and this machine creates solar panels. As simple as that. So if we deploy, for instance, let's imagine that we have a city as a place where there's a lot of green, or where there's no green, better when where there's no green. We put this machine there, and we put some sand, we bring sand there. And this machine will slowly add and add and add those solar panels. It won't be an increased cost, a lot of cost, but the people who want to participate could actually give what's probably the price of one single bill. And once they do that, they make this investment, the more we wait, the more energy we start producing, for instance, with this system. And then this energy, by plugging into the grid, we can just send them around for free. And that's a possibility on how we could do that without having to have big investments. And the cool thing here is that if I live in a city and we're doing this, and I meet you from the other city, I'm like, look, I don't pay energy. I literally don't pay energy. It's like, how do you do? Yeah, we created this. Oh, wow, we want it as well. And then slowly, we can begin expanding. That's an example of why we need to reshape and rethink in a different way on how we make investment. We don't need big investments for decades, like I said before, because then stuff becomes obsolete. We need to do a bit like we do also on the blockchain, a crowd investment. People who believe that put their money in because they want to show something, and then they receive the benefit of free energy. So free energy for a lot of years, which is not bad at all. Yes. Oh, the name of the machine, I really don't know yet exactly. But if you look around, the machine with sand that produces solar panels, you can definitely find it. Yes.
So first of all, I'm a huge fan of this idea, like it's sort of technocracy in general, and I believe that that might work actually. But I think that there are a couple of matters that might be quite problematic. I would like to know your opinion about them. So the first of all, as we all pointed out during the discussion, is the conflict of interest. So how can we make sure that, of course, there's abundance, but there's scarcity too. And we should make sure that this scarcity, like the trade-offs that we create between giving some resource to someone else, giving any resource to someone else, is actually compensated by something else in this system. And the second point is I don't think that humans should be in charge of that. I think that only machine would be able to make this system sustainable and make it work as how's it tended to work. And because yeah, because of the same conflict of interest problem as we talked about. So I would like to know your opinion about this.
Yes. So I'll go on the abundant side. On the abundant side, as I said before, when we need to develop technologies and clean and novel technologies, I mean also technologies that lower our impacts, lower our need for something. So if we do something much more efficiently, then what we need is much less. So in the same time, you start creating abundance. And also, yeah, so mainly is by changing what we use, by reducing our what we need, then what we have is actually abundant. And if we do it in a clean way, for instance, energy, as I said before, which is actually the base of pretty much everything, and we find materials that are highly available, so we change and we don't use any more plastic, but something else that is, for instance, sand, or we change our materials that we use, or organic materials, then we could actually create abundance for at least the essential services and needs that we need. And in terms of the machines you were saying before, I agree with you that it needs to be left out in the hands at some point of something that follows those rules. But we need now at least to give the beginning, to give the first rules and how they need to be followed. But if we make sure that all a big community and everyone who wants it, it's in consensus with the rules we choose, and we all agree that those rules are safe and they create a system that doesn't ruin the environment or the society as we know it, then we could give that to an AI which could automatically develop some rules and improve itself on its own. Yes, definitely. And that's why we need to test those AIs, because now probably 90% here, and maybe even myself, I want to see if AI works really, so we need to test it before. Yes, I hope I answered your question.
Yes, I mean, I acknowledge that it's a very, we should have more time for this discussion.
We need time. Time is key. Time is the main important thing. But we also need to work. We cannot just wait for time to pass by. We need to get there and do something. Anyone has any questions? And thank you very much for having heard me. And if you have any other questions, I'm here. Thank you.